how this almost neo-Fordist model of organizing space very narrowly. And it's 3 different floors of the same layout. This is the model shop. This is the sofa they designed, but it's also used for people who work all night. And this is what UN Studios place in the exhibition looked like then in the end. And now we leave Europe, although we maybe not leave it quite, but this is Lina Bobardi. She emigrated together with her husband. She was an Italian communist, and she left Europe in 1941 and went to Brazil, first to Rio and then to Sao Paulo. And she refused very much to have a conventional office. She called her practice of architecture a little socialist experiment, and I had the chance, she died in 1992, and I had the chance to meet with Masaru Suzuki, one of her long collaborators, who now works a lot in the northeast of Brazil. And he described that wherever you would see those hard hats, like the one she's wearing, you would know that this is the office of Lina. So she really tried to take designing till the very end and developed together with the construction workers and with the people on site, made changes till the very end. This was her office during the 8 years she did reconstruction of Sesc Pompeia, a former factory, which is now a cultural and sports center in Sao Paulo. And again, this shows the on-site office. And this was her very last office at the bottom of the hill where the glass house is situated. And the glass house now houses Lina Bobardi's collection. And this wooden lodge she built as her last atelier. What she liked to work with are watercolors. She very much defied conventional architectural plans, but liked drawings, also of technical details, and then she put words into the drawings so that the constructors or the builders working with it could actually read the drawings. And Masaru Suzuki told me that actually all the outlines, or a lot of the work in all these watercolor drawings, were done by collaborators. But I had never found any hint of that in the literature. So a lot of this collaboration that really goes into the designing is never a recorded one in the history of practice. And also the tools that are still there, again, they told me that no researcher had ever asked to look at those. And here she holds, here she holds a very small object that is part of a lamp that she had bought in the Northeast. She did a lot of traveling in the vast land of Brazil in order to, what she called an anthropological quest, in order to look at the native production, the handicraft, the skills of the craft, and to make that an integral part of architectural thinking. And again, this is, as you can see, what it then looked like in the exhibition. And now I would like to share a little bit about the research in Canada. I was invited by the Centre de Dessin de l'UQAM, that's the University of Quebec à Montréal, and they have a design center there, a place that has a 300 square meter exhibition space where actually a lot of the students use the exhibitions that go on there as learning site, one could say, or also as a place to have encounters. And the first Canadian practice I would like to share with you, they're called Shim Sutcliffe, Brigitte Shim and Howard Sutcliffe. So again, it's a collaborative practice, and they're based in Toronto. And what I found very interesting when visiting with them is that they very much stressed how they are a European practice, in the sense that they do not do one object of architecture and then another object of architecture, but that they try to create a whole oeuvre. And I found that an interesting concept as a projection of what European architects do. And I'm not really sure that European architects do that. So I think that's something one could think about, if that really is true in that sense still. They very much work with the materiality. As you all know, Canada is extreme when it comes to weather conditions. So how materials react to the north, to the weather, plays an important role in what you do with them. So what they try to do in their collection of materials is actually test out how they react to weather conditions. So they have all kinds of small samples. And they rely heavily on model making, on viewing models, but also, you cannot see those in this image, but also sometimes on size as models, to really go one-to-one in scale in trying out what the models are. And also on working, and I found that rather unusual, with the fabricators, so to really work together with the fabricators in the process of realizing and relying on the, as they said, immigrant craftsmanship, because there's a lot of, Toronto is one of the cities with the highest degree of immigration also within Canada. And what they pointed to is that if there is a new influx of immigrants, for example from Trinidad or from Poland, they still bring traditional craft skills. But those skills are lost within 1 or 2 generations if they're not, if there's no demand for those skills. So what they try to do is develop a real craftsmanship in working together with the fabrication, and spend hours of time with the fabricators, but also on the construction site. And they work from the scale of furniture, as you see here, to the scale of landscape. What they do in their office to make their language accessible to their, it's a staff of 8 people, it's not a very huge office. And what you see here is a spiraled book that contains all the sketches and drawings of one project. So they would circulate these also of previous projects, so that people could, the people who work with them could go into it and look into it for reference. But then another one is kept like this archive, and also all their materials are archived by the CCA, by the Centre Canadien d'Architecture et Montréal. And again, hard hats. So we just had the hard hats in the case of Lina Bobaji, but then also here we stumble upon the hard hats again. And while I was visiting, we also went to several construction sites, and you see Bridget Jim. She was originally born in Jamaica and then came to Canada, and her husband, Harold Sutcliffe, actually comes from Scotland and then came to Canada. And they also use, if different members of staff in their office work on different projects, every other week they would go to the construction sites of all the projects they work on at a time, so that everybody could be involved in the process. So they use the construction site as a kind of learning site. And I had never heard that before systematized in that way, and I thought that was quite interesting. This is Howard Sutcliffe with one of the fabricators working late at night. And as you can see, I really asked all the architects, I thought if I could spend a normal day, several normal days. So that means coming in at 8 or 8:30 and then being there till midnight. So it's to really become part of how the distinct practices practice or develop their methodologies of doing what they do. Whom you're looking at here, this is Richard Kroeger. He's professor at Dalhousie University in Halifax. Richard Kroeker actually studied at the AA in London, and then went back to Canada. And he had worked on a wide range or very many cultural projects in London. And then he went back to Canada with this quest or this search for what is actually Canadian culture apart from Kmart or McDonald's. And he said that through this search, he started out working with the Mi'kmaq community, that's the Native American community in Nova Scotia, in that area of the country. And what you see in the back, in the very back, is what he experimented first, because they had a long tradition of building boats and how you can actually transfer those skills and methodologies into what we do today. And what he takes off the wall is actually the way he, most of the time, in order to be faster than drawing, does. Because he said for him, drawing is too slow. Drawing is too slow for architecture. So what he does is cutting, and then you can go immediately from 2D to 3D. So when you look at his sketchbook, so this is how it comes out, and then you can conceptualize it in space. And then in order to keep it, it folds back in. And he said he actually developed this when his children were very small, because he had less time. And then his children would sit on his lap, and he would go over them with his knife and cut. So I'm not sure I would have done this, but I really liked the idea. How he pointed out that his family, who are not professionally trained designers, are very important for his process in constantly giving him feedback to what he's doing. And he also uses this knife and cutting thing as a didactical tool with the students when his students are stuck and do not go further in their design process. He gives them a knife and a paper, and then he says he just tell them, go from here to there, and then see where it leads to. And he also described that many times the students and he would work with the Mi'kmaq community, and that the Mi'kmaq tell the students not to draw their architecture, because the drawing would be only one fixed version. But if you don't have a drawing, but listen to the narrative of how things could be done, there is a multiplicity of ways to achieve it, and denoting it via drawing takes away from the richness of this knowledge. And I like this because it's kind of this meeting on his desk of all these different technologies that, in a way, complement each other rather than contradict each other. And the very last visit I would like to do with you is with Blanche Lemko van Ginkel. She's now 92 years old. She was the first woman to become dean of an architectural school in the North American continent. And what she practiced together with her husband Sandy van Ginkel, and they both did a lot of self-initiated projects. They went to the northern parts of Canada, they did mappings, they did cartographies. They are behind the fact that Vieux Montréal, which is very much touristified now, but it should have been torn down in the 60s because it was derelict and dilapidated, and a highway should have been built there. And they were actively trying to change urban planning, in which they succeeded at the time, that all this urban heritage was not lost. And she said two things that I found, I mean, she said many things because I spent the whole day with her, but two things I would like to share with you is, one thing is that she said, you don't need a fixed place to work. The best ideas can come to you while you peel your potatoes. And the other thing she said is that you do not find solutions in isolation, but that you have to